So welcome back to Rank Talks Bowl for the Copa America Matchday 1 reaction. I'm here joined by 8744. He's a good friend of mine. We've known each other for more than 2 years already, but he's actually never featured in my channel because I usually don't do with many guests my videos, but I feature in his channel a lot. You definitely should check him out. I'll leave his links down below in the socials, and yeah, so just go follow him everywhere. He's been doing football content for around 6 or 5 years now on every kind of football. He is from the United States, so he supports the USMNT and also he supports FC Barcelona. But he basically covers football from all around the world. So if you're a football fanatic, just go follow him because he does a lot of content and just covers just about everything and has a bunch of knowledge on a lot of teams. So we're here to discuss what happened in the first day, in the first week of the Copa America. What impressions left you from these first couple of games at the Copa America?
People like to criticize South America, saying, "Oh, it's boring." You see the same teams usually win again and again. And this match day, we had some upsets. Okay, sure, we had some teams that you expect to win, but it wasn't all we had some upsets. It wasn't all straightforward. That's the beauty with international tournament is that tournaments don't always go as expected. There's always upsets. There's no tournament that's ever 100% as expected.
So we're gonna start from the beginning. I guess I'll take the lead on this one. Argentina against Canada, the very first game of the Copa America. Look, I think it wasn't a perfect performance from Argentina. I think Canada really challenged us, especially in that first half. They created a bunch of clear-cut chances that they could have scored. Remember that Buchanan, Jonathan David, and even Alphonso Davies had a few chances where they probably could have scored against us. Eustáquio had a header as well, where Emi Martinez had to make a good save. But overall, I think that this game was defined by the poor finishing on both sides. And in the end, in the second half, it was Argentina who, with their quality, prevailed on the game. We saw Di Maria miss a one-on-one, Messi missed two one-on-ones, Alexis McAllister miss a header. So it was a very scrappy game. It also wasn't helped by the fact that the pitch was a disaster. The pitch was usually, most of these stadiums in the USA are usually turf, and they switched them last minute to be grass on top of the turf, which looks absolutely horrible. And it wasn't only on this game, it was on many games as well. I usually don't talk about it, but I think it's a big deal from the organization to just kind of play the tournament in these conditions. In the end, I think it was overall a solid win from Argentina, because even though we were challenged by Canada, it was pretty commendable that in the chances that we did concede, we didn't concede a goal. Our defense was pretty solid. I think Cuti Romero played a fantastic game. Emi Martinez, when he had to show up with a few saves, he did. Lisandro Martinez stepping up instead of Otamendi was also pretty good. In the midfield, Rodrigo De Paul, I really liked what he did. And I think that one of the positives for Argentina is that our two strikers, Julian Alvarez and Lautaro Martinez, who were on a bit of a drought in official games, got to score in the same game and get that confidence back. So I think that we played a great game, and had we finished those chances, this would have been a thrashing. We should have won by many more goals. But overall, it's good to start with a win, and over the course of the tournament, I think that we'll improve on our finishing and we'll grow into the tournament and be the candidate that everyone supposes of Argentina.
I think Canada surprised us because I don't think a lot of people expected Canada to actually compete with Argentina, because they actually were making it difficult for Argentina. And Canada, especially on the pace, they had a lot of pacey players that caused a lot of issues to Argentina's back line defensively. And I just think for Argentina, man, the defense was resolute. And obviously, you guys were very on a clinic. Honestly, both nations missed a lot of chances. This should have probably been a high scoring match. It should have probably been a 5-2 or maybe a 4-2. And I just think for Canada, I think the issue for them is just that I think the pressure gets to them I think they tend to rush it. If that makes any sense. Given how we're gonna get to the other two nations in a bit, I think they have a great chance to progress from this group. I'm not really that convinced of the other two nations in this group, to be honest.
So yeah. I mean, since you mentioned that is a great segue. From the other game, which we saw, El Clásico del Pacífico, Chile against Peru. What can you tell me about that game?
I don't have much to say other than Why did I watch this match? Oh man, that Sanchez miss, man, that was a horrendous miss.
That was really bad. Yeah. Overall, it was a very messy game between the two. We knew it was going to be like that, very physical always. But there were almost like 40 fouls in the game. It was very hard to play for both teams. The midfield was just like a minefield. It didn't make much sense. And yeah, Alexis Sanchez early on, huge miss. I still don't get how he missed that. And if Sanchez scored that, we would have gotten a completely different game. I feel like Chile would have tried to defend more, and maybe Peru tried to open up to get an equalizer, and maybe we see a more back and forth game. But the fact that that chance was wasted like that meant that we were left with a very dull game where not much happened. But I think that a lot of credit has to be given to Peru. Because in that second half, I really think that they showed up. Peru executed exactly the game plan that they wanted, and they hit Chile on the counter attack, and they created a few good chances. La Padula had a few chances. Paolo Guerrero, who was substituted in the second half, even got a chance as well. Before the end of first half, Bravo was forced into a good save as well. So I think that Peru ended up being the team that looked the better, especially in that second half. And it's very disappointing for Chile because with all the talent and the recent results that they were showing under Gareca, I was expecting so much more from this team. And I feel like they really disappointed, especially in the second half where they barely created anything.
I think a lot of people kind of felt, a lot of people kind of rated Chile highly, not really because for the team itself, but more so because of how good Gareca is as a coach, you know. And I think that's a crucial aspect we have to take in consideration because for Chile, as I said, man, for Peru, I actually thought they played a lot better than I expected. I didn't really think Peru, because I had low expectations for Peru in this Copa America. I didn't think they would do that well, and the fact that they were actually able to play well against Chile, their rivals, and with their coach leaving as well to their rivals, it must feel good for Peru. Like, hey, we might have denied Chile. So
yeah, very much. But that's also a question that I wanted to ask you. Who do you think is happier with the draw?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know, man. You got to help me out because I don't know. Because I feel like it might be Peru, maybe.
It might be Peru. I feel like Peru is probably in a good position as long as in the next match day they beat Canada. They're going to be playing against Canada tomorrow. And if they can win that game against Peru Premium, it's going to be Peru against Peru Premium, Peru with 5G and stuff. If they can win that game, I feel like Peru put themselves into a good position because we're expecting Argentina to beat Chile. I think that is an expected result. And if that happens, that forces Chile to beat Canada in the final match day. And maybe Argentina in the final match day play with reserves or kind of don't go so hard against Peru. So I feel like maybe Peru is a bit happier with the result, but all of that really depends on them beating Canada. And I think that this also gives a huge opportunity to Canada because, yes, they lost the opening game, but now that both their rivals have dropped points, all they have to do is win those games. And, you know, I think with how all the teams played, it's very possible that Canada can take points and take a win against either Chile or Peru. I wouldn't rule it out of the questions. They really played well, and I think that those games, Chile against Canada and Peru against Canada, are both going to be very, very competitive. Now, moving over to Group B, we're going to start with the first kickoff. So Venezuela beating Ecuador 2-1. Thoughts on that game?
Venezuela showed up. They surprised the people, and I think it shows a manager difference on the sidelines. Like one manager was able to make substitutions at halftime, change the game from a losing position, whereas the other manager was like, complacent, saying, hey, let's just rest on a 1-0 lead that we have. I think it paid dividends because honestly, Ecuador should be winning this match. With the quality of players they have and the talented players they have, they should be winning. I know a lot of people are going to say that they kind of won this game because of red card thing, which I don't think. For me, it's a stonewall red card. I don't, and for me, it's not really. That's not really on Venezuela's. That's really on Ecuador. That's their fault. That's their fault for doing that. So you can't take that away from Venezuela. So, and even if that red card didn't happen, are you sure? I feel like Venezuela may have still won this game. You can't say with. I don't think the red card was that impactful. Because Ecuador played really well without the strike, without Ener Valencia for a large part of the game.
I think that a lot of this game is gonna depend on that situation that happened with Ener Valencia getting sent off so early on. Even then, after the red card, Ecuador were playing pretty well. Jeremy Sarmiento was having a fantastic game, and yeah, he ended up scoring the first goal of the match. Kendry Páez getting the assist, or the pre-assist on that one, you could say. And yeah, it was a very solid performance from Ecuador up until that point, even being down a man. And then, like you said, at halftime, Batista made the subs. In come Cadiz and Bello, and they are the two goal scorers that turn around the game for Venezuela. Both plays being set up by their talisman, their striker Salomon Rondon, first with an assist and the second with a header that forces a save from Dominguez that is then tapped in by Bello. So it was a commendable effort from Ecuador, but in the end it wasn't enough. Felix Sanchez had the right plan at the start, and that plan kind of went out the window when Ener Valencia got sent off, which I think it's very unfortunate for him. But like you were saying, there was no in-game management from him. Meanwhile, Batista was able to recognize what his out to win in that game was and make the substitutions that allowed him to get himself into that position. And yeah, in the end, Venezuela get a massive 3 points and kind of flip this whole group upside down, because we were counting on Ecuador to potentially get a win or at least a draw in this game. I had predicted a draw, but if any of the two teams were to win, I would have said Ecuador. I think that Venezuela winning was probably the most unlikely result. And yeah, it's surprising because Venezuela is a team that was often like the whipping boys of CONMEBOL, and they are kind of getting out of that stereotype, both in the qualifiers and now in the Copa America as well, which is, this might be a bit controversial, but you could even say that Venezuela has performed better than Ecuador in Copa America in the last few years. In 2011, Venezuela made the semifinals, and Ecuador hasn't made it past the quarters in the 20th century. In fact, Ecuador has been beating a CONMEBOL team in Copa America since 2001. It's been 23 years since Ecuador has beaten a CONMEBOL team in Copa America. So there's a lot of pressure now on Ecuador on their next two games, which are both going to be against CONCACAF opponents, where they really need to step up and probably win both games if they want to make it to the next stage. And touching on those two CONCACAF teams, we have the other game, which was Mexico against Jamaica. And I gotta say, I was not convinced by either of the two teams. In fact, I was a bit surprised by the way that Jamaica were playing. I feel like they were being very direct and very solid with their passing, playing out of the back. I feel like Córdoba Reed was having a good game. Jamaica were playing a very solid game, and Mexico were not able to find their outs. It looked like in the final third they were being very wasteful. Quiñones wasted a lot of chances. Santi Jimenez was also not on his day. Also, on top of that, Edson Alvarez getting injured in the first half and having to be subbed out for Romo, who actually played a decent game for once. I think that Romo really stepped up as that replacement for Edson Alvarez. But overall, a very dull game from Mexico, who were really struggling to break down an opponent that they usually beat in CONCACAF. At the start of the second half, I thought that Jamaica was the most threatening of the two teams, and we had that disallowed goal for Antonio, which was rightly disallowed, but it showed that Jamaica were really pushing Mexico at that moment. After the disallowed goal, Mexico grew back into the game, and we saw that amazing goal scored by Arteaga, which gave the win to Mexico. So it's a win. It's important 3 points for Mexico, but the ways weren't convincing at all. And now they're going to have to play Venezuela in the next match day.
It's weird for this game because Jamaica actually did a lot better than I expected. They didn't, because typically whenever Mexico-Jamaica usually happens in the last couple of years, because, I watch a lot of CONCACAF, so I know pretty well. Usually Mexico rolls over Jamaica. Usually Jamaica just rolls over and Mexico usually beats them. However, this time, Jamaica actually put up a great performance. My only concern with Jamaica, defensively they were great, midfield-wise great. I just feel like for Jamaica, the issue for me is, I don't know if you saw this, they did so many long ball over the top. And I feel like Mexico figured that out, and it made it easy for Mexico to deal with, I think. I feel like after the disallowed goal, I feel like Mexico just grew into momentum. They were eventually going to score because their goalkeeper, Jamaica goalkeeper, by the way, that was a backup goalkeeper because the main goalkeeper's injured. He was incredible today. Yeah, he made I think 6 or 5 saves, outstanding saves. He was incredible on the day.
Yeah,
And
let me get the name because it deserves a mention. Jamali White, who plays in Lokomotiv El Paso, who is last place in the USL, which is basically the second division of MLS. Like, how did they
wow.
fund this guy? Like, he's closer to a Sunday league team than a professional football team. Like, it doesn't make sense. And yet he played such a fantastic game. And yes, he had to make some saves, but they weren't like that. Besides the Santi Jimenez one, I feel like he didn't have to make that many forceful saves. Mexico were being very, very wasteful in the final third.
Oh yeah, that's true. But like, I still think for a backup goalkeeper to do that is pretty insane. Because usually your backup goalkeepers, they're usually not as good as the first choice. You're usually your first choice. So, and yeah, for Jamaica, as I said, man, they played well, but I feel like Jamaica, they kind of, I don't explain this, but I feel like after the disallowed goal, Mexico started to take the game by control, and they weren't able to stop that.
Jamaica pretty much had no chances in the second half after the disallowed goal, and Mexico just kind of was able to do whatever they wanted. Yes, they wasted a lot of chances, but they bashed their head against the wall so many times that eventually it crumbled down, and that was the Arteaga goal. Jamaica just looked like a very naive team. I feel like this is a common trend this is a common trend in CONCACAF teams, that the teams just are pretty naive and don't know how to play against the physicality of CONMEBOL, and this is something that could punish Jamaica in their next game against Ecuador, who are a very, very physical team, even to CONMEBOL standards, and we're going to see how they deal with that. And for Mexico, they should be fine if they get a draw against Venezuela, but realistically, it's a game that obviously Mexico, with their history and their pedigree, they should be looking to winning. But it's going to be very dangerous because they're going to have to play a lot better than that, because Venezuela are much better than Jamaica, like in pretty much every single aspect, in defense, in midfield, in attack. So if Mexico want to have a chance of winning that game, they're going to have to improve, in my opinion. Moving on to Group C, I'll let you start off this one, because we had the host, the United States of America, winning 2-0 against Bolivia.
It's a great win. Let me just start saying this right now. However, I'm not as happy as other people may be, because I feel like for the United States, we should have won this game by a bigger margin. 2-0 is a very, kind of, how to put it, satisfactory, average. It was a good win. Pulisic showed up. He had a great game, fantastic game. Balogun also scored. And Pepe, man, oh, jeez, the amount of chances Pepe missed was insane. I was like, how is he missing these chances? Ridiculous. Gio Reyna was way too deep as well, was a problem. McKennie kind of looked a bit underwhelming as well. And what other players? Way I thought was good. I think for the United States, man, we just need I think our striker is a big concern for me. We just don't have a reliable number one striker. Even though Balogun's our number one striker, he's not really been that prolific. So yeah, for the United States, man, I'm kind of a bit concerned, but at least we got a clean sheet, and at least we got the win. So I guess I can't be asking too much.
Yeah, I mean, I think that credit has to be given to the United States, because obviously the Copa America is not an easy tournament to approach, especially as a CONCACAF team. It was always going to be very hostile, and I think that the United States needed a statement in the first game, in the first official game, now that the friendlies are gone, that the qualifiers are gone in the first tournament game. The USA needed a statement win, and they got just that. They were far and away the better team on the day. But like you were saying, it should have been by a bigger margin. I think that the United States winning against Bolivia should have been a given. I don't think this was a surprising result whatsoever, and this shouldn't be expected. And with how poor Bolivia were on the day, I don't think that Matt Turner had much work on the day. Bolivia tried with a few shots from outside the box, but they weren't really clear chances. At no moment it looked like the United States may concede. So the clean sheet was never in any danger. So it was just a matter of scoring more goals. And like you were saying, it should have been a bigger margin, because you scored very early with that amazing Pulisic goal. But after that, you were finding it kind of hard to get a second goal. Balogun, yes, ended up scoring a goal near the end of the first half, but at the start he was missing a few clear chances as well. McKennie too, and Pepe once he came on as well, just completely stinking it in front of goal. So it was like you were saying, a bit of an underwhelming performance, at least in the goal scoring aspect, which is something that we are seeing with a lot of teams so far in the Copa America, that goal scoring has been the issue, which you can attribute to it being the first games and teams just kind of trying to find their groove into the tournament. But for the United States, yes, its statement is a good win, but like you were saying, this was to be expected, and it should have been by a bigger margin, like you were saying. So I agree with a lot of the sentiments. I think that the bigger test for the USA it's going to be the next game, because once we segue into the next game, which was Uruguay against Panama, I think that Panama were honestly competitive in that second half. Like the first half, I saw absolutely nothing from Panama. I think that they were same as Jamaica. They were being pretty naive. They were having troubles playing out from the back through the middle, losing a lot of possession, like against Bielsa's gegenpressing. Like you cannot play out of the back like that. They were giving away so many turnovers, and that gave a lot of chances for Uruguay to score. And I mean, that Maxi Araujo goal, in my opinion, is so far the best goal of the tournament. It was at least the best goal in Matchday 1, in my opinion. It was very similar to the Pulisic goal, but just the way that it curves into the top corner, it was just so fantastic. But even then, Uruguay also were missing so many chances. Darwin Nunez was missing a few sitters as well. Ronald Araujo had a clear chance. De Arrascaeta as well, who was playing as a starter after a while. It's been a while since we saw De Arrascaeta, and honestly, he didn't have the greatest of games. So I think that in the first half, it was looking great for Uruguay. They were looking extremely dominant over Panama. But then the second half came, and I think that we started seeing some doubts with Uruguay, especially in the midfield. I feel like the midfield for Uruguay in the second half was extremely quiet. Fede Valverde was having a lot of trouble finding his footing. And from the 50th to the 80th minute, I would say that Panama was the better team. They created a few good chances. They were dominating possession. They were great in the build-up play. And Uruguay were not finding any answers. And remember, the game was still 1-0 to Uruguay only. So it was a very scary situation for Uruguay in that situation. Obviously, then they got 2 quick goals before the end of the game. And in stoppage time, Panama got one of their own. So it ended up being 3-1. We saw the two sides of Uruguay. We saw in the first half the very dominant team that are one of the favorites to win the Copa America. And in the second half, we saw a very doubtful Uruguay who kind of didn't know how to approach the game from the midfield perspective. And Panama who, to their credit, fought back very bravely in the second half and who are going to be competitive in their next game against the USA. I know that usually USA takes care of business in that matchup, but it's a game that the US has to be pretty careful about. So how did you feel about this performance from both Uruguay and Panama?
Yeah, Uruguay were amazing that first half. They were that Uruguay I saw there was one of the favorites of Copa America.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second half was what was that? The second, it felt like a completely different team. I don't know, was Uruguay just resting the second half? I don't know. Do you think they got complacent in the second half? Because I kind of feel like they kind of did to some extent. Maybe.
It was a bit weird. Also, we had Ronald Araujo being subbed out at halftime.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
It was from what I've read, it was down to exhaustion and dehydration. It was very hot in Miami that day. The pitch was also awful. In the first game that we mentioned, the pitch was horrendous as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that they maybe got a bit complacent from how easy it was on the first half, but they didn't score their chances. And suddenly Panama realized, wait, they aren't scoring more goals, so we are still in this. It's only 1 goal away. So they grew back into the game. And that's the moment where I got worried, because in the midfield, Uruguay weren't finding any answers. Valverde looked very lost. He was pretty much a ghost on the game.
Yeah, Panama play. The thing with Panama is they don't really have a lot of big name players, but they play so well as a team. And that's a key thing in nowadays tournaments, is that it doesn't matter the players that you have. It's more about, can you play well as a team? Because that means more than individual players nowadays. Obviously individual players can score a goal out of nowhere, as we saw in this game. But generally, it's more about how well you play as a team, because I thought Panama were playing so well. Carrasquilla was amazing. He was running to that midfield, and they had some great chances. I don't know if you remember that. I think they had a free kick that was like really it was a close one. Then when Nunes scored, then I was like, yeah, it's over. It was over because so.
Yeah, and it was a great finish from Nunes as well. It seems like the guy cannot score easy goals, because the ones that he had in the first half, it was a bit of a disaster. But that finish for the second goal was classy. I think that it shows to Bielsa that he needs to rely on Nicolas de la Cruz some more, because after he came on for the second half, he pretty much changed the game. He got that assist for the third goal, and he was pretty much who got Uruguay through those difficult times in the midfield. And the Arrascaeta, I love the guy, but maybe he needs to get dropped for De La Cruz if that's going to be the midfield, or maybe try a 4-4-2 formation. But Bielsa has to sort something out for this thing not to happen against a bigger opponent. Luckily now, Uruguay has time to figure that out, because their next game is against Bolivia, and they should take care of business with ease. But for the third match day against the USA, Uruguay needs to have things sorted out, because I still think that Uruguay are big favorites into this match, but they cannot underestimate the USA in that game, I feel like.
Yeah, then that Morello scored a very nice goal at the end to give some consolation. And yeah, Panama, they could do something, so Panama could get a result against the United States. Obviously I don't want that to happen, but if they could get a result, then they believe in the final match day and they're good to go. So they definitely need to try to, if they could repeat what they did against Uruguay, they could definitely get a result against USA, because we weren't that convincing either. So
absolutely. I agree. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next match day for this group. But probably it's going to be even more interesting to see what happens in the second match day for Group D, because let's start with the first kickoff, which was Colombia against Paraguay. I recently did a watch along for that game as well. We did 3 watch alongs in my channel for the match day 1, and Colombia Paraguay was one of them. And I think that it was also an unconvincing performance attacking wise, this time from Colombia. I feel like Luis Diaz was pretty quiet on the day. John Arias on the other wing, also quiet. And Borré, I don't remember a single touch of the ball from Rafael Santos Borré, for real. I don't remember him doing anything. This game was solely won off the boots of James Rodriguez. I'm saying, like, it was an amazing performance from him, getting the 2 assists. First, with a great cross for Daniel Munoz, who appeared on the far post like he did against Spain in that friendly, and scoring with a header this time instead of a volley. It was a fantastic goal with that kind of team play. And then from a set piece, James once again put in the cross for Jefferson Lerma to score from a header. And it looked like it was cruise control for Colombia, who were having a bit of trouble creating play through the build-up or with the wingers. But at least from the set pieces and the crosses through James, they were getting the goals. And it looked like they were going to win the game easily, because, we know Paraguay from the previous friendlies and the qualifiers and everything. But here's what happened. Paraguay scored a goal. This is something that we didn't expect. Like, it was an amazing cross, and Julio Enciso with a classy finish. By the way, the person who put the cross, Ramon Sosa, who was subbed in for Miguel Almiron. Like, Miguel Almiron did nothing that game, nothing. Miguel Almiron has been so bad for the Paraguay national team for so long now that I'm starting to get tired. At this point, I don't think Almiron should start, because Ramon Sosa, who plays in the Argentinian league for Talleres, played in the Copa Libertadores and is going to play the round of 16 there. He put in that great cross for Enciso to score, and Paraguay got a consolation goal. And suddenly it got a bit dicey, because Paraguay started believing in themselves a bit more, and they grew back into the game. And yes, it was a kind of a hectic game from that point. It was very fought in the midfield, and there weren't that many chances. Both teams had a few shy attempts at goal in those final few minutes, but it was not convincing from Colombia, which is a team that a lot of people are expecting a lot from, me included, with the crazy unbeaten streak that they still continue the unbeaten streak at least, but I expected them to take care of business way more comfortably in this game. I know that Paraguay is a good team, but we know of the struggles that they have to score, and even then they scored. I want to say they also scored because in the first half, John Lucumi, which I think is Colombia's best center back, got injured and had to be subbed out. And we saw the dreaded center back partnership of Jerry Mina and Davison Sanchez that I don't want to see ever again, because I feel like Colombia are going to leak so many chances if those two are playing. Vargas is going to be a busy man at the Copa America.
I thought Colombia, in some ways, it kind of feels like they won this game because of James Rodriguez. And that just shows how good James is a player, but it also kind of shows how underwhelming Colombia were on the day, because like I really expected more. Like Luis Diaz was pretty underwhelming. Borre, and it's just a shame for the Colombia, because I can you really expect James to do this every single game? I mean, I know he's a quality player, but every single game, I'm not so sure. And they're gonna need those little players to step up. And I think Lemmer also got injured, I believe, in the first half. I think.
Yeah.
So he's also one of their most integral players, I believe. So that's also a big blow. So, yeah, I think for Colombia, as I said, man, they got to hope those injuries aren't too long, because Luchema and Lerma are crucial to this team, because we don't want to see Yermin Mina. Yermin Mina is not that good. He's declined, man.
Yeah, so. Yeah, no. It's not the same. Give me a few words about Paraguay, because obviously they're gonna be very disappointed that they lost this game, because they definitely had avenues to potentially get a result, especially after scoring that consolation goal through Enciso. Especially because their next game is Brazil. What are the chances for Paraguay currently?
It's tricky, because Paraguay, for me, as we just talked about, they don't have a good record of scoring, but they have a good record against Brazil in the Copa America. I think the last couple of meetings, Brazil have failed to beat them in regulation. Mm-hmm. And obviously this is a group stage, so there's no pens. So it's you either win or draw. Because that's what I see happening. I don't see Paraguay beating Brazil. I think it's either going to end in a win or a draw. They have to start Gustavo Gomez. You have to start Gustavo Gomez against Brazil. You have to. You can't bench him against Brazil.
Yeah. There were a few weird squad selections, like you said, from Paraguay, not starting Gustavo Gomez and not starting either of the two goalkeepers that we expected to start. Like neither Miguel or Coronel started in this game. They started some guy that was making his first cap for the national team in this very game, which is crazy. Like I don't know how you start a goalkeeper in a tournament like that. And to be fair, he wasn't bad on the game. I don't think he had any responsibility for any of the two goals, but it's crazy that they made those squad selections, and they're going to have to get something against Brazil. Obviously, in the final match, they're going to have Costa Rica, and that's a potential avenue for them to get out of this group, but they 100% need something against Brazil to make it happen, which kind of segues into the final game that we have today, which just ended. Costa Rica 0, Brazil 0. 80, I gotta say, I've been watching Copa America for a long time. The first one I remember vividly was 2011, which it also helped that it was hosted in Argentina. So like I have a lot of memories of that. A lot of tournaments. This is one of the most shocking results that I remember. Like I cannot think of many results that come close to this, because before this, Costa Rica had never drawn against Brazil. The record was 10 wins for Brazil, 1 win for Costa Rica, which was all the way in 1960, 64 years ago. And Brazil was fielding like a B team, and that's like the reason why Costa Rica won. So this is like, in a competitive game, it's the first time that Costa Rica get anything against Brazil. And man, it was so frustrating to watch Brazil today. Vini Jr. could not complete a single dribble today. He had 0 out of 6 completed dribbles against a guy who plays in the Costa Rican League. Haxel Quiros, the right back for Club Sport Herediano in Costa Rica, completely pocketed the main contender for the Ballon d'Or. That's crazy. That's crazy. And then you also had their goalkeeper, Patrick Sequeira, who plays for Lugo in Spain, having to step up after the retirement of the legend Keylor Navas and making some crucial saves to keep his team on the game. Shout out to also a lot of the center backs. I think that the center back, their captain Calvo, was great on the day. He plays for Juarez in Mexico. Mitchell was great, I think. So there were a lot of standout players, especially in the defense for Costa Rica. But still, this is a game that is on Brazil to win. If Brazil wants to win this game, they should win it. There's no way that these results should ever happen. And the fact that Brazil were so atrocious in the attack, sure, they had a disallowed goal, which was a bit controversial in the first half. I think that at first glance, it didn't look offside. Then I saw a couple of images flying around where it looked like Marquinhos may be offside. It was definitely a very tight call. There were a few penalty calls that Brazil were protesting about that I don't think were penalties. One from handball in the first half and then one on Rodrigo in the second half. I don't think neither of those were penalties. But still, even with those appeals, I think that those are not excuses for Brazil. They should be beating Costa Rica, who, in my opinion, in my sincere opinion, I think that Costa Rica is the weakest team at the Copa America. Half of their squad is under 23. They are preparing for the next World Cup cycle. I don't know how they pull this off. Like I feel like Gustavo Alfaro may be the second coming of Jesus Christ, because it doesn't make sense how he pulled this off.
Costa Rica, man, they made CONCACAF proud.
Yes, they sure did.
And I think Costa Rica getting a positive result was something that not even CONCACAF fans even had expected. So, like, this is like incredible. You have to give. You know what? I think we should give a round of applause for this, because it's commendable. This is a commendable achievement. At Costa Rica, man, what they did in this game was fantastic. Defensively, were amazing. Obviously, we know their attack wasn't going to ever really be that amazing, but as the inferior team, you have to put this in context. Inferior team, your duty is to get a result. It doesn't matter if it's pretty, it doesn't matter if it's ugly. At the end of the day, it's hard for you to have it's easier for you to go defensive, you know. And so I don't really blame Costa Rica for being defensive. I know a lot of Brazilians are probably angry and upset, but you have to think from their point of view. Like, they're the inferior team. What do you expect them to do? Play end to end, like make it like competitive? Like, they're gonna get smoked, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, man, I think Costa Rica showed that they're here to compete and that they could do something here in this Copa America. And maybe they're not the worst team in the Copa America,
Maybe they're not. Maybe that narrative gets flipped all upside down after this performance, and they're gonna have to play Colombia in their next game, and they are gonna have to try and show another similar performance. Now that they got this point, they are trying to find a win somewhere to progress out of the group. From either Colombia or Paraguay, they're gonna have to find a win in either of those two games to progress from the group. But yeah, it's going to be extremely interesting. I think that there really wasn't a good performance on Brazil. I feel like the least bad performance was probably Paquetá. I think that he created a few good chances from the midfield, but then no one in the attack was able to capitalize. Not Vini, not Rodrigo, who was also very wasteful. Rafinha was putting in a few good crosses, but it wasn't enough. The good cross that he put was also for the disallowed goal on Marquinhos. So I think that Rafinha probably was the better of the front three. Endrick came on and had a chance early on, but after that he didn't really touch the ball. He was a bit missing. Savio, I think that he had a good cameo, but it wasn't enough. So it is just like, where do you find solutions in this Brazil team? And Eddie, is the Neymar narrative saved? Like, has Neymar been forgotten for all that happened during his time with Brazil? People say that he failed because he didn't win the World Cup with Brazil, because he didn't win a Copa America with Brazil, that Brazil won a Copa America without him. Eddie, was Neymar carrying this team?
In my opinion, yes. Especially the last two major tournaments, like the World Cup and the Copa America. For me, he was Brazil's best player in both those tournaments. And you just saw the impact he's had on the team. Like, he's done everything. And the team is pretty much the same. Like, the team is the same without Neymar. The only real difference is that you have Endrick. Because obviously Endrick wasn't there that time, I believe. But yeah, pretty much everyone else is the same, right? So
yeah, I mean, there's no Casemiro anymore, but because Casemiro was also kind of washed, and his replacement wasn't very good. Joao Gomez really isn't the guy.
Oh yeah, Joao Gomez. Yeah.
So that's another problem for Brazil, that they haven't found that true CDM to kind of fit into that position. But it's not like the problem in this game was the CDM. The problem,
No,
the
it
CDM
was
problem
attack.
is gonna be another game. In this game, it's only the attack, because Costa Rica barely even attacked you. So the defensive aspect, it doesn't even feel fair to give a rating to the defense or to Alisson, because they didn't have to do any work. It's the attack who needed to step up, and it just wasn't there. Kind of an uncomfortable question. Should Dorival bench Vini?
I would say yes. I know this is going to cause a lot of controversy, but I'm just a human being. This is just my opinion. And like I said, at the end of the day, I'm not making the decision. It's Dorival that's making the decision.
No. We are just two random dudes talking about football. We know absolutely nothing. There's a reason why Dorival is sitting on that bench and we're sitting right down here, right? But we can still have opinions. And yeah, I think I agree. I think that with how bad Vini has been performing for the national team, I don't think it comes down to Vini being a bad player. Vini is a fantastic player, but I feel like he kind of needs a bit of a wake-up call, because it's not like you can start just because you're Vinicius. You're not going to start because you're Vinicius. You need to actually show up. So if you're not showing up, well, we're going to give the opportunity to someone else. And if he shows up, well, he's going to stay. And that was your problem, because we gave you the opportunity and you didn't capitalize on it. At least that's my reasoning.
Yeah. And for me, like for Vinicius, you're gonna have to earn it from off the bench. Maybe if you perform well off the bench, then you could start. But you got it, because at the end of the day, it's a meritocracy, right? You have to earn your spot. You can't just start because of your name. Like the thing is, like Vinicius, you're an amazing player for Real Madrid. There's no one's gonna say you aren't.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't start for Brazil just because you're from Real Madrid. Like you have to earn your place.
There was a lot of talk before the Copa America about this narrative that we didn't want to see Brazil getting grouped. When that word got thrown around, I was like, nah, no way. Look at the group. There's no chance. Like Costa Rica. And now they drew against Costa Rica. Their next game is Paraguay. They better win against Paraguay. They better win against Paraguay. Even if it's 1-0 ugly, I don't care. They need to win that game. And I feel like it's the most dangerous game that you can approach as a Brazil player and as a Brazil fan, because Paraguay are smelling blood in the water. They can feel, after seeing that performance, that this Brazil team is not invincible. And they are going to go get it, because after their loss, they're going to need a result. They're probably going to need a win. So, but yeah, it's a scary thought. It's a scary thought. I don't, even as an Argentinian, I would laugh a lot if Brazil gets through.
You would do it.
I was laughing tonight. Like I have no shame in saying that. I was laughing watching the game. But from a football fan point of view, I don't want to see Brazil get grouped. When Brazil do badly, football loses. That's something that I admit, because Brazil represents football, and the fact that they are doing this bad is really a shame. If they get grouped, the passports get revoked. You are not Brazilian anymore. That's how it goes. It's not. You do not deserve to wear that shirt. And again, thank you so much, AD, for coming on. Remember to follow him because he's covering the Copa America himself, and like me, he's actually covering the Euros. So if you want to know anything about the Euros, you can check out his channel to know more about it. And after the international tournaments are done, you can also check him for club football, which he also covers. He does every single league. He does all the top 5 leagues in Europe, MLS. He likes occasionally to cover other leagues as well whenever something big happens. So anything football related, you can follow AD. He's going to be joining me for the rest of the Matchday 2 reactions. By the time you see this, I'm going to be doing a watch along for the Argentina-Chile game tonight. So be sure to be up for that, because it's going to be a very exciting game. We're going to try to take revenge on Chile at MetLife Stadium, where we lost that final in 2016, which was a very memorable moment. We're going to see if Messi is able to score in that game, which would be an amazing comeback story after he turned 37 years old today. So thank you again, AD, for coming, and thank you all so much for watching. I'll be seeing you all next time.